Frick.
Literally just got LaCroix all over me. And all over your floor. Good thing there's only natural flavors.
Yeah, all natural. Completely 100% natural.
Oh boy. Okay. Dry needling. If you've been here, you know we do it a lot. If you've talked to anybody that's come here, they're probably going to talk to you about the fact that they got needles stuck in them for therapeutic purposes.
It's true.
Apparently. And it's interesting because dry needling has been around for a while, but it's definitely recently become more popular and more clinicians are doing it, especially within the last 10 years. But it seems like now, like, there's a billion education companies out there that teach all sorts of clinicians to do it, chiropractors, PTs, ATs, doctors. I mean, so many people are doing it, and there's so many different techniques and ways to do it. There's so many different philosophies behind it. You've got your trigger point philosophies, you got your autonomic nervous system philosophies, you have your like trying to relieve and reduce mechanical tension in tissues, and there's just so much information out there. And then I run social media for one dry needling education company that I do educational posts for, and so I'm constantly kind of combing the research, and the research is interesting about it because it's like every single research article you read that's ever been done about dry needling, especially the systematic reviews and meta-analysis, it's like you got all these studies. Well, does it help shoulder pain? Well, okay, let's look into the 5 studies they decided to include in it. And then you look at them and it's like, well, they all used one particular technique, but then they all did different types of exercise after it, or didn't do any exercise. Some of them were followed up for a month. Some of them were followed up for a year. And it's like there's the results and everything and what people say, like, is dry needling helpful, is it not, is just so varied. But it's because dry needling is such a variable tool that can be different at the hand of every single clinician, especially with where their clinical knowledge is and their background is. And so I wanted to talk more about what we particularly use dry needling for here, because the education company that we took most of our education through, you've taken multiple others, but the one that I've taken all my education through did a good job of discussing most of the philosophies out there. So whenever I dry needle someone, you know, I can go after trigger points, or I can go for an effect on the autonomic nervous system, or I can go at it with the purpose of trying to loosen up fascia, or trying to provide more input to the nervous system in that area to have muscles fire more or relax more. So there's all these different ways that we use it. But Brett, I kind of wanted you to speak to why dry needling here is unique, and discuss some of the different ways that we typically use dry needling here to get results for our patients.
Loaded question as always. Love it. So, dry needling, or therapeutic stabbing, as some have dubbed it, is an incredibly helpful technique. And at the end of the day, it's just a tool. So when we use dry needling, it is usually to try to help us get to the end goal faster. It's a therapeutic tool. That's it. We have other tools to do the same job. They just may not be as effective or get us to that end goal as quickly. So one of the analogies I use a lot is if somebody dumps a full dump truck of dirt in the parking lot and we have to move it 100 yards to the back, would you rather use a tractor to do that or a wheelbarrow and shovel? I'm all about work smarter, not harder, and so I would much rather use the tractor. Scoop a bucket, go dump it. bucket, dump it, rather than shovel, fill the wheelbarrow.
The barrel wheel.
And then have to wheel it all the way back there and dump it and come back and get another one. We can accomplish the same goal much faster. There are a ton of different techniques to go about that. And usually you're going to see a lot of variance in the techniques based on where people took their education. Because those education companies will spin it as this is the only way to do it, or this is the only researched way to do it. And all research is evidence, but not all evidence is research. And a lot of the evidence and knowledge that we bring to it is because we stick a lot of needles in a lot of people. And there are things that we do that we've just learned through, well, that seemed to work a whole lot better than anything I learned in the class officially. So there's a difference between somebody who plays the piano versus a concert pianist and or an organist. Like, I can go sit down and I know all the notes on the keyboard and I can play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the organ, but if you really want somebody who can do it, you got to go to somebody who is well trained in that and does it all the time. So there's a difference between doing dry needling, which a lot of different companies and different clinicians are trained in now, and people who truly practice the art and science of it and do it all the time to the point where they can do it more efficiently and use a variety of techniques to accomplish those different goals. Now, when we're treating an injury, it completely depends on what the injury is, how we're going to go about that. It depends on what type of tissue the injury is in, how we're going to go about that. Dry needling is incredibly effective for helping bones heal. We go in with that needle, we create micro injuries to the bone and the area around it. That stimulates the body to say, hey, there's a problem right there. We're going to take more cells in there and fight that. So it brings in a whole bunch of new cells to fight, and that helps in that healing process. When we're talking about super tight muscles, we can go in and grab onto those trigger points and either stretch that tissue out or just kind of punch that trigger point in the face and say, calm down. You just be done. We can go into the fascial web of the body, and the fascia is this beautiful matrix of spider webby type stuff that connects muscles, ligaments, tendons, bones, organs, everything. It's literally everywhere in the body, and we can go in and grab a hold of that and stretch it one way, stretch it the other way, and get a really good mechanical loosening of that. Anytime you have a strong sympathetic response, which sympathetic is going to be like a pain response, fear response, something like that.
It's fight or flight.
Fight or flight. You're going to get an equally powerful, hopefully, usually, parasympathetic response after that. So we have people all the time that will do a big heavy needling day, and then they'll report back a day or two later and say, I slept like a rock.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We put your body into the max level of stress by sticking giant needles in you and
Twisting them, moving them
out, you know, whatever the
scary places.
case might be. Yeah. And then your body goes, nope, recovery time. And so it will drive you into a deep, deep parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest and recovery state of the autonomic nervous system. And so we can get tremendous stress relief with that. We can get nervous system changes. We talk about autogenic inhibition and reciprocal inhibition all the time, where if one side's turned on, you got to turn it off so the other side can turn on, because if one's turned on, the other side can't. That's just neurologically how it works. So we have to address the brain by saying, stop it here, and nope, turn on over here. So it's kind of this like magic show sometimes of look at the birdie, and we'll be able to bring more awareness to that area to kick things on. And there is no necessarily right or wrong way to go about it. I certainly have my thoughts on how some of the education companies go about it and how they teach, and where I think they miss the boat, which is fine. It is what it is. That's not what we're trying to argue. The point is finding clinicians who know and understand the biochemistry, physics, and neurology about the body well, so that they can use all the techniques at their disposal to make those good quality changes for you.
Yeah, well, and I think of if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where, and most dry needling education companies, particularly for their entry-level classes, it's going to be about safety. Like, they just want to teach people how to be safe with needles and not give someone a collapsed lung or hit an artery that they shouldn't and stuff like that, which is great. And then, the later level classes that you take will sometimes delve into more complicated techniques or maybe more risky areas to needle in and around. But most of the education companies that are out there kind of show, if you need to needle the shoulder, let's look at the deltoid, and this is where you can stick a needle in the deltoid safely to create changes, and all that is great, but it's still up to you as a clinician to apply your experience and clinical knowledge to how that tool is used. And the same goes for the cupping, the scraping, the red light, the laser. All those are great tools, but you have to be able to put your clinical knowledge and experience, your knowledge about all the biochemistry and physics and everything like that, to how you use the tool. So, when we're doing dry needling here, I don't look at it as a single closed-minded faceted approach where, you have pain in your low back, so I'm going to stick needles in your lumbar multifidi, and hopefully that solves the issue. I'm going to look at, why does the low back appear to be tight? Are the hips super tight? Are there other issues going on? Do they rotate well through their T-spine? Do they have the hip mobility they need to take stress off the low back? And then after all that assessment is done and everything, and most of the times you and I, whenever somebody comes in as a new patient and they have a chief complaint, we're going to dry needle you, but most of the times, like 90% of the time, for me anyways, I'm not just going to start dry needling your area of complaint. I'm going to use my evaluation of your movement and your symptoms and your injury history and everything to then probably go about treat and dry needling other places. So
criminals don't cry out, victims do. And a lot of times an area where you have pain is the victim of the criminal somewhere else that is creating an overstress, overpressure, whatever. In that spot.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because I know you hear this too, is we'll get people that have come in here and they'll be like, I've had dry needling before. And sometimes they'll be like, it worked a little bit. Sometimes they're like, yeah, the dry needling was great. That's why I came here. And then other times they're like, it didn't work at all. I didn't feel any relief, so I'm not going to do it. But we have to go back through the history, what their injury was, what the problem they're dealing with is, how maybe the dry needling was applied back then, because it is very possible to dry needle the chief complaint and get zero results because where the chief complaint is not where the actual issue is. And so, when it comes to you guys trusting us with your healthcare and your evaluation of your movement and your injury, the reason why we're going to tell you we're different is because we are going to take absolutely everything into account, from your experience, your body, what you're going through. But then we're also going to apply all of the clinical knowledge, all of the continuing education courses we've taken, all the stuff we learned in school, all of our personal experience with past patients. We're going to put all of that to use to make sure we can make the most custom and effective treatment for you as possible. So, when it comes to dry needling here, it's not just dry needling. Dry needling here is not just something that you can go anywhere and get.
Nope.
It is different here.
Very much so.
And I'm going to stand on top of that hill and defend it till I die, because it is clear and obvious that dry needling here is used a lot differently than it is at other places.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep. Stand on business.
business or business?
Business. Stand on that business.